Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana and I'm suffering from seasonal allergies. Hi, this allergies where I live, have been the worst I think it's been in a very long time. Very long. It is late May, mid to late May, and for about a month and a half, my right ear has been clogged on and off. It's so tedious. This has something to do with this book review. But I've been stalking the pollen count for weeks. And as of when I'm recording this, at the end of this week, the pollen, tree pollen in particular, is going to be so high. I don't think I've ever seen the rating that high before. So I feel like I can't hear myself. Anyway, I'm sick of it. I'm ready for these trees to stop dusting everywhere. This video, Check Out 19 by Claire-Louise Bennett. This is an interesting novel, a little bit hard to review because it's got its own style, but this is my attempt at reviewing this novel. I sometimes wonder if my inclination for abstruse ideas wasn't in fact a form of passive aggression. So Check Out 19 by Claire-Louise Bennett is an interesting narrative. The narrator, in a sometimes lucid and slightly stream of consciousness style, recounts her key memories, beginning with her adolescence. And then we kind of go into the 20s, which I'm assuming are the 20s. The narrator shares how certain events throughout her young life, coupled with the various books that she's read throughout her life, have served as these timestamps, helping to shape her identity, certain spaces in time, and her own creating process. So for my brief synopsis, memory is clearly a running theme throughout this narrative, and I found that the way that memory is discussed in Check Out 19 to be quite Proust-like. And I mean, I think these quotes will, if you've read Proust, you know in some of the key words that Proust uses when he talks about memory, it's going to sound very familiar. As I read, I understood that my memory had isolated and preserved several images in such a way that they were deprived of any interwoven meaning they may possess. I noticed I was beginning to feel anxious because events leading up to it were depicted and dealt with very differently from my memory of them. As such, doubt started to creep in, and so I read on slowly in order to delay discovering something completely at odds with my cherished memory, my bedrock. I was searching quite desperately for resemblances. What I found most enjoyable about Check Out 19 are all of the books and the authors that the author references. And so some of these are authors I've read, or some of them that are authors that are currently on my TBR. Some of them were completely new to me. And so as a very bookish person, it was almost like being in the club, like it's just the more that you read, and when certain titles or authors are mentioned, you're like, I know, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and this is a book for bookish people because just the titles and things that she mentions are just, they feel familiar. So the author does go over the pivotal works of fiction that she read and how they served as markers throughout her youth, shaping her through various experiences. Bennett also proposes the idea that the way that we solely become what we read, and our identities and actions are shaped, molded by the literature that we are processing. I can buy it again, of course, and one day that's what I'll do, I expect. And as I go along reading it again, I'll underline sentences here and there once more, but they won't be the same sentences. It's very likely that the sentences I underline in the future will be different from the sentences I underlined in the past when I was in Tangier. You don't ever step into the same book twice, after all. So that particular quote was about a book that she had annotated, and she somehow gave it away or something, and she never got it back. And so she no longer has the physical copy of that book with the annotations that she made in it at that time to remind her of who she was when she read that book. As an avid annotator, as you can see, I don't know if I've ever showed any of my annotations. As an avid annotator, let me see. I found that highly relatable. This is why I love to annotate, because it is a time capsule of what is going on in your mind as a reader when you're reading that book in that space in time. Then when you revisit that book, you can see what you had a tendency to gravitate towards at that period and how much your reading or your life has changed when you decide to pick the book up again. So it's just, and then you also see what you missed the more that you keep rereading a book. So yes, I found that very relatable. That the pages you read bring you to life. Turning the pages. Yes, that is how I have gone on living and dying and living and dying. Left page, right page, and on it goes. Sometimes all it takes is just one sentence. Just one sentence, and there you are, part of something that has been part of you since the beginning. I don't want to lose myself in their shadows. Their darkness might swarm in and drench mine, and I won't be able to tell them apart. And then what? And I was afraid that if I become immersed in the writings of Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath and so on, I'd become horribly self-conscious. Again, and she's talking about, do you become the authors that you read? Do you take on their traits? Do you take on their flaws? Do you take on their own demons? How is that going to affect you in your own psyche, your own reading, your own writing? And so as she's talking about Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath, two authors who are also, yes, their catalog of works is phenomenal, but they also were very troubled human beings. They had, in a lot of ways, very sad lives, and their endings were quite sad. How they died were quite sad. I'm using that too, so I don't have to censor myself on, I'm using YouTube-friendly language. So she wonders, if I read these authors, in a way, do I embody them, and will I take on what they dealt with? It's a very fascinating concept. I don't think so in particular. Not for me, but, do you become what you read is what she's asking. So one of the blurbs on my edition of this book calls Checkout 19 an existential tour de force. Yes, it's right here. And I have to agree. I've been on an existential kick this year. It is what it is. The amount of times words like estranged, isolated, separated, bewildered, discord, etc., too many to name, to symbolize how disconnected the narrator feels from her exterior environment, and how the author feels disconnected, or the narrator rather feels disconnected from her exterior environment, would take too long to count. It's just so many words. And you'll see in the quotes that I used, the two quotes that I have as these examples, they're words that I didn't even list here. And, just the plethora of words that she uses to portray this are unlimited. So, and as the narrator continues to mature and experiences certain key life events, her interior and exterior worlds feel very at odds, and that is Existentialist 101. Yes, it's very basic existentialism, but it is like Existential 101, where you're in your sociology class 101 at university. These are the type of topics that you talk about. I am not long for this world. I am not long for this world. I was already experiencing the sensation by this time that I was outside of the world, looking in feelings that since mostly gave rise to were ones of forlornness and anguish. They didn't tell a story. They expressed confusion and despair and desire and anger, irrepressible forces that issued out of the dissonance that existed between my interior and the world around me. So lastly, the narrator muses over this process of creating. It's woven in and out of throughout the novel, whether she is drawing or sketching a depiction of somebody's likeness, or she's discussing the written word or something that she's written. There's a section of the novel that reads, it kind of is woven into this narrative where she is retelling or recounting a story that she came up with in this really bizarre character. And it's really kind of a bizarre fictional story that's kind of put into this novel. And to me, at least, it came across as Bennett discussing or showing how the birth of a character happens, and how I've heard many authors say this on podcasts or interviews where they're like, all of a sudden this character appealed to me, they came to me, and the character will tell you how to write them. It's almost like this entity is real and talking to them. And so that's what it reminded me of. It also gives rise to questions such as, what is the point of artistic renderings? And what is the point of fiction? There's no resolution. We could debate this for hours. What is the point of fiction? For hours. What is the point of fiction? What is the point of creatively writing about life, artistically portraying life? But these are just general questions that you can tell she's posing here. That's what she wanted to be doing, really, committing something or other to the page. What exactly was the point of reproducing an illusion? I found Checkout 19, what am I doing? I found Checkout 19 to be an interesting and thought-provoking novel. It's not a long book, but it is on the denser side, mainly because of the writing style. It took me a while to get into the groove of the style, and then it was smooth sailing from there. It took me maybe 50 pages or so to get the gist of what she was doing with the style. I found it to be quite well written, and I like that Bennett did decide to take some creative risks with the way that she wrote it. She purposely plays around with punctuation and sentence structure, lack of commas where there should technically be commas where there may not necessarily need to be commas. So the style is a bit unconventional, but not so bizarre in a way that it's off-putting, at least to me. You do, in a way, have to slow yourself down just to kind of see what she's doing. She repeats certain sentences or phrases in a sentence, and it can come across as a bit poetic. But I still think it all works. I will say that there are some bits that I found a bit boring, mainly the story within the story, this fictional story that she had within the story with this fictional character that she's kind of talking about. But it doesn't take up the entire novel. It takes out maybe half of it or so. And so it didn't, I just took the effort to push through those segments, and when it was done, it was done. But it didn't make me dislike the novel. It just, those aspects were a little boring to me. I am not interested in reading Pond by this author. So Pond came out, a couple of years ago or so. It's a collection, I think, of short stories or essays or something. I saw some excerpts from Pond, and I was like, not my cup of tea. But I will be interested in seeing what this author releases in the future and how she continues to maybe push some boundaries and be a little bit more experimental with the form of the novel. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Again, I enjoyed it. I am always down for an existential theme, an existential theme. And so, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was worth the read. And again, if you like the way that Proust discusses memory, I think that you'll get on with this. And if you are a bookish person who likes it when authors name drops books, novels, and other authors, I think you'll get on with this as well. That is it. Have you read Checkout 19? Have you read Pond? Pond is one of those books that's like Marmite. People like it or they don't. I think I'm not going to like it, so I'm not even going to spend my time reading it. I'll just skip that one. I went to Checkout 19. So yeah, Checkout 19. Is this on your TBR? Have you already read it? Please share your thoughts down below. Please feel free to like, subscribe, leave me a comment as always. And if you would like, please feel free to also follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. That is where all of my reviews go live first. I post my monthly TBRs, my monthly wrap-ups, and a good funny meme in the stories every now and then, because in my opinion, the internet is where we go to laugh. Social media is for having a good time. Instead of all the bickering that often goes back and forth about the state of the world. Yeah, I try to stay away from that on social media. There's enough of that as it is. So, with that, I will see you in the next one.